Spirit of life, let us hold in our hearts today and every day not only our own fathers, but all fathers. We offer thanks and appreciation for all those fathers who were able to mentor and nurture their children, who have worked hard at jobs they may not have liked to support their families, who have struggled not to pass on to their children the wounds that were passed on to them, who have attempted to change as the definition of fatherhood has changed, and who have given unconditional love to the best of their ability. We offer gratitude and compassion for all those fathers who've had to leave their children behind to go to war, and particularly to those who gave their lives. We offer compassion for all those fathers who have lost their children through terrorism, violent crimes, the courts, or untimely death. We offer gratitude for all those who volunteer to act as a father for those in need because they care. And we strive to offer forgiveness to all those fathers who've abused and abandoned their children out of their own unresolved pain. Spirit of life, may we never forget to appreciate every beautiful example of fatherhood we have personally experienced or that we see around us. Those acts of kindness and caring can remind us of the best of who we all are. This morning's reading is from Tom Wolfe in The Bonfire of the Vanities. Sherman made the terrible discovery that men make about their fathers sooner or later, that the man before him was not an aging father, but a boy much like himself, a boy who grew up and had a child of his own, and as best he could, out of a sense of duty and perhaps love, adopted a role called being a father, so that his child would have something mythical and infinitely important, a protector who would keep a lid on all the chaotic and catastrophic possibilities of life. We gather here this morning as stewards of this sacred historic landmark, rich.
Good morning. My name is Mason Morfitt, Jr. I would like to share a few of my experiences as both a father and as a son. There's a bad apple in every barrel, and you're it. Those were my father's words to me, his 10-year-old son. The imprint of those words, and words like those, left me with a legacy of anger and addictive behavior that ran my life. I was initially determined to prove my father right. I was a very difficult son. Later in life, I attempted to get his approval by being the kind of successful, high-achieving man that he'd been. And then came March 14th, 1969, 6 a.m., in a hospital in Boynton Beach, Florida. My life became about something beyond just me. My son Cameron was born, and at the age of 26, my life changed forever. Holding this wondrous small person in my arms, I was determined I would not do to him what had been done to me. I still wanted to be that successful man that my father had been, but my priorities were beginning to change. It would not be enough to reach the top of my field to bring home the bacon for my family. I was going to have to go on an inner journey. And it's been a long journey, and it's not over yet. Fortunately, I have had help. I am lucky to live in an era steeped in information and opportunities for healing that were not available for my father. I found mentors, and I'm married to a psychologist. But I was not a quick study. I had built thick walls. I didn't want to talk about it. Eventually, I agreed to try a type of peer counseling. My favorite counselor was the kind of man I would have liked for a father. With his kindness and support, I was able to get in touch with my feelings. I was even able to cry. And I went to workshops. Instead of taking a 30th wedding anniversary trip to Maui, I agreed to go with Jane to a 10-day spiritual healing retreat, the School for the Work with Byron Katie. Over the years, there were more retreats and workshops, more visits with therapists, and more long talks with Jane. I am on an inner journey to heal. Along the way, I've had many mentors. Throughout my life, I sought out older men who had the attention for me that my father did not. My Uncle Bill, with whom I lived at different times growing up, the foreman on the ranch where I worked in the summers, the advertising executive I met at 18 in art school, the two principals of the graphic design firm where I worked for 10 years, all were important mentors as well as father figures. One of the most important of the many lessons fatherhood has inspired in me has been forgiveness. Forgiving my father was a critical part of my being able to move forward in my own life. Once I saw the destructive patterns that had been passed down from generation to generation in my family, it became easier to appreciate that my father had been doing the best he could. His 2 suicide attempts in his 60s and 70s were vivid examples of me of the pain in which he lived. My anger turned to compassion, and compassion for my father seemed to encourage compassion for myself as well. Mark Twain said he was amazed at the improvements his father made between the time he was 15 and 28. I think of this process as the process of becoming more compassionate. This compassion is also a critical component of my own evolving fatherhood. One of my potentially destructive patterns, which I inherited, was to tell others what to do. I needed to be in control. I fortunately have a son who's always been very much his own person. He isn't just like me. I've learned to get out of the way and be compassionate. Instead of calling him a bad apple when he chooses a path I'm sure is a mistake, I look for just the right words of love and support. In doing things his own way, he's thrived. Cameron became my teacher in other ways as well. One time, after Jane and I had an argument, she went off to our bedroom in tears, and I was reminded how this kind of scenario had happened repeatedly with my parents. I sat paralyzed on the couch by the restimulation of this old childhood pain. Cameron, age 10, came over and said, "Dad, this is when you go upstairs and give Mom a hug." I did as I was told. One morning after a night of drinking and smoking, which had left me feeling hungover, Cameron said, "Dad, I wish you wouldn't smoke anymore." I never had another cigarette. My father's pain and its effect on me forced me to explore my own inner world in order not to perpetuate that pain with my son. My son Cameron has been my guiding star. He's always been easy to love, and that love inspires me to be the best man I can be. While my father certainly had many wonderful qualities, and I have many happy memories of my life with him, I am most grateful to him for the inspiration his painful words gave to me to go on that inner journey of healing. I'm also grateful for how his lack of availability motivated me to see the world is full of father figures and mentors who don't have to be blood related. Each of these special men in my life also inspired me to look for all the ways that I can be that mentor or father figure for others. And I'm most grateful to Cameron for being the light of love that has kept me going when I've struggled along the way. Thank you, Cameron. Thank you, mentors. And thank you, Dad. Kate Wallace Rogers.
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you, Mason. I wish I had, a couple more hours to edit now that I've heard all that. But I was born in New York City in 1962, and my father did some of the usual things that good fathers do. He read us classic stories at bedtime like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and My Father's Dragon. He sang a couple of lullabies, We Three Kings, several verses, and The Eensy Weensy Spider with all the hand movements. He was a good beachcomber, looking for sea glass and worn down bricks. He tossed back the pieces of glass that weren't good enough. When I presented him with chunks of sand that I called birthday cakes, he would always smile and say, "Thank you," until I crumbled them in my fist and laughed, thinking I had fooled him. It wasn't cake at all. He sang in the Father's chorus at school every Christmas time, booming out masters in the hall with all the other girls' dads. But mostly, I remember him sitting in the dent he had made in the long olive green corduroy couch, reading, or he might doze off or lose himself in conversation, yelling out at his work partner, saying all the harsh and clever things he could never muster the strength to say in person. He was an advertising, a copywriter, a madman. He could never think of what to say to his boss in person, who, along with my mother, dominated him into a Walter Mitty kind of submission. But at other times, when I was younger, he would play card games with me, Russian Bank, a form of double solitaire. I would remind him of the rules, and he would tell me not to pick my nose. He taught me that voting was important. He had voted socialist in the 30s. He believed in civil rights for all humans. He taught me that if you steal from one person, you steal from all of us. Because the system breaks down. That's why you have to be honest and pay your taxes and not cheat on insurance. Because democracy and the social systems work well for everyone if we each pay our share and vote and take responsibility for ourselves. I was proud that he had a really high IQ, but my mom would get angry at him because she said he didn't do anything with it and use it to get ahead in life. like he didn't deserve it at all if he was going to only sit on the couch and read. My dad had about 1,000 books. I loved them and their colorful spines and the knowledge they represented. Mostly English fiction and world history and drama, Greek tragedies to O'Neill. It was a very dramatic household, artistic, creative, but with this pall of depression over it. We could all three be home, my brothers away at boarding school and college, and my mom, dad, and I were each isolated in our own space, triple solitaire. My mom on her bed with a special table that allowed her to type there. My dad sunken into the end of the couch, and I in my room, each writing in our own worlds. Bless you. I didn't feel much connection to him. We were so different in personality. He so introverted and seemingly shy, unathletic. He liked stats. I loved playing sports and competition, playing hard and sweating. He was 47 when I was born. Often when we were out in public, people thought he was my grandfather. Even my mother, who was 9 years younger, was considered old. I looked for surrogate fathers in my friends' dads and older men that I dated, people I could learn from and interact with. There was such a disconnect, but that's just the way it was. My parents were barely a couple. He had disappointed her by being such a poor businessman, much like his own father. As I write, I notice I remember a lot more about him than I had imagined. I remember how my mom wanted a divorce, and she said he wouldn't grant it because then he would be a total failure. So they didn't divorce. I really wished they would have to end all that fighting so she could move on from being such a martyr who worked all the time to support us. I felt that when she got cancer and soon died when she was 59, that it was partly because she worked so hard, while my father said she said my father made about $70 a week, or was it 70 cents? I felt she died because she couldn't be happy or fulfilled in love. I didn't remember them hugging or kissing since I was very young. After my mother died, my brother and I joined this Gilbert and Sullivan group that she had belonged to for 35 years. Each spring, they performed an operetta for 2 weeks, benefiting a local Manhattan charity. We had grown up in this group that rehearsed twice a week throughout the whole year and then had the cast party at our house. My brother was an actor, and I had been singing with this group since I was born. Legend had it that I was born during Mikado, and the whole men's chorus showed up in the hospital to serenade my mother and me. I grew up going to parties and bars after rehearsals with my mother, singing along with the tenors in the a cappella tags and barbershop songs. My dad wasn't in the group. I'd listen to the 78s of the Princeton Nassoons and learn the songs of the 20s and 30s they'd sing in the bars that we closed at 4 in the morning. I never drank anything but Cokes, but there were some who questioned my mother's judgment, allowing me to participate in such activity. My favorite song was, "People know that you are married, people know I'm married too, but nobody knows that you love me, and nobody knows that I love you. So if you want to go on having these lunches, well, we can have them just the same. But sweetheart, if you talk in your sleep, don't mention my name. Hey babe, don't mention my name." The production almost always coincided with my spring vacation, so my friend Leah, the daughter of one of my mom's friends, Bob, and I were allowed to tag along even until 4 a.m. when the bar would close, and we'd all, my mom, 3 or 4 of her guy friends, and I would walk down the middle of Lexington Avenue, skipping and singing in the spring dawn. These were some of my happiest memories with my mother's friends, who were like a pack of wonderful uncles to me. After my mom died, one of these men, let's call him John, came up to me after the rehearsal at the bar and said, "You know, your mother and I had an affair." I knew they spent a lot of time together doing crosswords and laughing at inside jokes at the rehearsals, but it hadn't occurred to me that they had had an affair. In typical 23-year-old style, I said, "Yeah, I knew that," like WTF, and walked away. Well, 15 years later, after my dad had died, I decided I was ready to talk a little more about it. John and I had spent a lot of time the past decade avoiding each other, partly because I looked so much like my mother with my long braid down my back that he was very uncomfortable around me. But at the 75th anniversary party, we sat and talked for a while, and it came up that I remembered being 15 and asking my mother why my eyebrows were so bushy and thick and no one else in the family had eyebrows like mine. Typical teenage self-consciousness. I really liked my eyebrows. What was weird was that John said my mother had told him that story. Now, why would she tell him something like that? I don't know. But it indicated a level of intimacy that I hadn't realized they shared. I looked up and saw his eyebrows were quite significant. 15 years later, at the 90th anniversary party of this group, I re-met a woman who I knew through Leah, my friend who used to sing with me walking home, and the uncles. This woman was Leah's best friend. I had known her since we were 15. She reminded me that she was adopted, and she asked what I thought about her finding out about her biological parents. She hadn't wanted to find out while her parents were still alive, but her mom had just died and her father was 90. So what did I think? Should she do it? Well, I said, I thought she should. If it were me, I would just be too curious. I'd want to know. She'd already found a detective, and once she got started on the case, she might know in a very short time who her parents were and if they were alive and if she had siblings. I told her I would. Life's too short. Then I told her about how, based on the eyebrow story and the long-term affair, I was curious too. Not imagining it could actually be true, but I told her that I'd ask him for a DNA test if she'd hire the detective. So we did. She found out about her parents, and I got up the nerve to ask John if he would take the test. He agreed to get the kit, and after a wait of a few weeks, we found out. The rest is history. 99.99999% sure that he is my biological father, not William S. Wallace. I will say that at 93, he's still working. He rides a bike around New York City and skied until he was 90. He's also a writer and an actor. He's not ready to reveal more about himself, so I will honor that and hope that over time I may learn more about him and my half-siblings. I also hope that he and my children may even get to know one another. The spiritual lessons of Father's Day for me: don't judge. You never know if the truth that you are living is right. It's just all you know at the time, based on what you've been told by people who may not think you're ready for the whole truth. You may have been taught to see right and wrong as black and white. You may have been taught to judge children born out of wedlock as illegitimate, lesser, only to find yourself in that very gray area. Listen to and follow your heart. Watch for signs. A curandera, or a healer in Mexico, worked on me about 10 years ago, and after an hour of being rubbed with herbs and flowers and bathed in oils and purifying waters and tears, she asked what I thought had been revealed, and I said I thought it was about my parents and that maybe my father was not my father. Soon after that, I had a massage in which the woman therapist was moved to climb up on my back and work deeply. I felt a glowing green light released from my heart that hovered over my scapula. It had the face of this man, John, in it, like in The Wizard of Oz. Just before they draw the curtain back and the wizard is revealed. So listen to your heart and watch for signs. The universe is mysterious. So much depends on your perspective. We are all connected. All the world's religions seek to delve into the energy and power of that connection. It only takes one spark to light up the night. Seek your truth. What's great about being a UU is that we can learn from all spiritual practices and see where they overlap and reveal our connections. No need to feel illegitimate or that we don't belong. Our connection is love. Even while humans may get fearful and confused and hurt and angry and hateful, what we have in common is love. I was born of love. More will be revealed.